What we found in our own data is that about 76% of sales qualified opportunities that come through that form get attributed by software to search or direct traffic, organic search, paid search, direct traffic. If you look at it from what the customer says, only 3% say that they found us in search. So 74% from software saying come do search, and 3% of search when customers report. And when customers instead tell us that they've found us through social media, a podcast, referrals and word of mouth, or communities. And that drives at the moment 84% of our sales qualified opportunities, most of which would never get measured by attribution software. There's a long roadmap of things that you can do with this when you break out of the cage of using just software to measure stuff. So let's get into it. We are at Demand Gen Live. Great to have you here on Tuesday. Marketing is pure offense.
So you have, in your career, 8 to 10 attempts to do something legendary.
We have all up here this thing called Dark Social. It's episode 83.
This is the best, most interesting content on marketing I've heard in more than a decade.
We're in the process. I think we've implemented this now on 30 B2B SaaS companies. And I believe that I see in the wild, I see a bunch of people that are listening to this content that are not Refine Labs customers that are also implementing it and getting ridiculous insights about how to drive strategy that is just something that you're not seeing right now. And so let's go through it. The first thing on self-reported attribution is that what we've done, and we did this first on ourselves and then we've helped other companies roll this out, is that on our high intent conversion form, which is usually a request a demo, get pricing, request a consultation, something like that, high intent conversion on your website, we put in the form a field that says, how did you hear about us? Which is free text required. And the person, after they fill out their name and their email and their job title and their company, they're going to tell you how they heard about you. And then we get that information in the submission and we compare it to what Visible says, or what HubSpot and Attribution says, or whatever other system that you're using. And the fact of the matter is that those 2 points are very different. And they're very different for a reason. What the customer reports is they're going to report what created the demand. They're going to report how they heard about you, in what channel, who told them about you, or how they figured it out, what created the demand. That is a level of data that companies don't have right now because they only rely on software to collect attribution. And then you get attribution software that most likely tells you what captured the demand, which is why you see so much organic search, paid search, direct traffic, or lead gen channels coming from attribution software, because it's all about capturing demand, because that's what the limitations of the software allow it to only measure most of those things. When you don't ask the customer and use a self-reported attribution or another qualitative measurement mechanism, you're left with a very slanted, overweighted view to specific channels that are the easiest to measure and the places where buyers pass through to buy. We've encouraged companies to implement it. We've seen a bunch of companies do it and have success and get similar results to what we did. What we found in our own data is that about 76% of sales qualified opportunities that come through that form get attributed by software to search or direct traffic, organic search, paid search, direct traffic. If you look at it from what the customer says, only 3% say that they found us in search. So 74% from software saying come do search, and 3% of search when customers report. And when customers instead tell us that they've found us through social media, a podcast, referrals and word of mouth, or communities. And that drives at the moment 84% of our sales qualified opportunities, most of which would never get measured by attribution software. Other companies don't have that data point, and so they make suboptimal strategy decisions because they're only using software to measure these things. And so now that we kind of have some context about what we're doing here, we've successfully rolled this out, I think, on current 27 B2B SaaS companies, and we're going to continue to grow that number. And then we're going to collect data at scale. And then we're going to publish data and reports so that people see what's really going on. right? People are going to look at Chris, Refine Labs, it's a professional services company. Your ACV is way higher than ours. But when you take it and we go and get this data across 40 companies and we aggregate it and we show that these trends are actually the same across all these different industries and buyers and ACV types and company sizes and maturities of categories and things like that, that people are going to think differently about how they measure attribution. Some of the key learnings, I want people to take some action. So if you've listened to this and you've attempted to implement this at your company, or you actually have implemented it and you've started to collect some data, I just want to share some learnings because I've been reviewing it. Number one, people want things to be easy, and so they use a drop-down field instead of a free text field so that it gets easily categorized. I think this is entirely suboptimal. The actual things that you get when you have a free text field are so much more valuable than a drop-down. I would argue that a drop-down actually, some people will click things that aren't true. I know people give that to me, and I choose something that's not true. For instance, I bought something, a gift for my sister, and they asked me after I've checked out where I heard about it, and the truth is that I'm friends with the CEO, but they didn't have that, so I picked referral. So I literally gave them bad data because they didn't give me the option to tell them the truth. And so that's happening in your forms too, because people will just scroll and pick one. They might pick the top one. It's biasing the answers. So I highly encourage people to do a free text field. Once you do the free text field, you can build in like string matching automation and get 95% of the stuff done automated afterwards with workflows. You don't need to restrict, and then you have both. You have categorized one that's easy for analysis, and you get the whole thing, which for some people are paragraphs of data talking about how they've learned about you and heard about you and figured out how they got to your form to start to try and buy from you. And to not give your customer the chance to tell you that, I think is just not smart. So free text over drop-down, 100%. If you're using a drop-down right now, I encourage you to switch that immediately. You're gonna get way better data. The next one is required versus optional. You should 100% make this a required field. If you don't, we have a limited data set on this, but multiple companies have done it this way and made it optional. The data is showing that if you make it optional, less than 50% will fill it out. And if less than 50% will fill it out, is it even smart to drive strategy off of that? Is it even worth having it on there? I don't think so. And what people will say, this is funny, this literally happened on Monday, I think. They're like, we're making it optional so the conversion rates won't go down. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, now you're concerned with the conversion rates of your form? I'm looking at your form. You have one for the state of where someone's submitting from. All of this publicly, if you have their email, you can figure out what state they're in. You have 6 checkboxes for what product they're interested in. Your form is totally not optimized for conversion already, and now you're going to use it as an excuse not to make it required for this field. When people push back about the conversion rate on the form, it's typically just an excuse to not do something different, because if you analyze their behavior, they're not concerned about conversion rate anyway. They're just using it as an excuse. The next one that I'm seeing that I really just want to caution people on, you can see in some of the boxes, it'll say first name on top of it, but then maybe it'll have like Joe and then Smith. Like people will put helper text so people know like, okay, this is the format of the phone number you should use. This is an example of like Acme Company for the company name. And then they have a field that says, how did you hear about us? And they have EG, colleague, social media, referral. And then go and look at the results. It biases the results. All the results that you get say the exact same thing: social media, colleague, referral. So if you cannot put suggestions in here in a free text field because it biases what people put in there. They're just going to put whatever they read. It truly is. Like if you did market research that way, it would be 100% biased. We need to think differently. We need to be smarter about how we do some of these things. I don't know what else to say. Those are some of the key learnings that we're seeing. I think that the free text using string automation. So for instance, for us, just so people can really get tactical here, I had about 100 submissions before I went through this, and I literally did this myself, and it's super easy. It took me less than an hour. So you have a marketing ops team, or literally anyone could do this. And I look at the submissions of what people already wrote. And then when people put like state of demand gen podcast, I have automation that says if the submission includes podcast or state of or that, then it automatically sees that text and it says, okay, this is from the podcast. If it sees LinkedIn or capital LI or things like that, it automatically puts it in the LinkedIn bucket. If people put in, I'm automatically checking if it says Revenue Collective or Peak or these things, and it gets bucketed into community because people have already submitted with that data. So I know that it's coming and I know how to flag it. And so you can get the free text and have it be required, and then basically through automation, filter it down to the place where maybe you have to do 5 a month manually, but you get 95% of the way there through automation. Once you actually have all of it, you can put together dashboards, which is what we've started to do now, and look at it in 2 different ways. What's capturing the demand, what's creating demand at the high intent conversion level, at the sales qualified opportunity level, at the customer level. You'll literally see different things. If we go to our customers, last time I checked, there was probably like 10 data points from when we've been collecting this at customer. On the capture demand side, it was just like what the data talks about, is 70% organic search. It was like 20% direct traffic, and it was 10% like offline sources. They were already in our database, something like that. That's what's capturing the demand. That's what you're going to get in attribution software. And then when you look at self-reported attribution, what's creating demand, it's literally just, I think it was probably 50% LinkedIn, 25% podcast, 20% community, some level of word of mouth. And you get no search, you get no direct traffic, you get none of that stuff. The take home is like, there's literally just another level of data here that you could capture super easily. Comes directly from the mouths of your customers, that arm you to make strategy changes in marketing that you want to make anyway. If you listen to this podcast, you want to make these changes anyway. You can't, because attribution software doesn't read the right things. That doesn't tell you what's happening in the real world. It's telling you what's happening in software. And so if you literally just implemented this, it would like serve it up on a silver platter where you can go back to executives and be like, look, we just did this for the past, we just wanted to collect data for 2 weeks. Here's what we got. Looks like 30% of our stuff is coming from social media, but we're not investing there at all. There's a long roadmap of things that you can do with this when you break out of the cage of using just software to measure stuff. So let's get into it.